For the best information and background we could get, we went to the Museum of Flight. How safe are modern commercial airplanes, in your opinion?
Modern commercial airplanes meet the highest safety standards that have ever been developed for aircraft, and they're actually very safe machines. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of work over time to develop safety methods, to understand better what causes of accidents are, what can happen with an airplane, as well as the rules and regulations to which an airplane has to meet to be able to be operated have been examined and improved over time to improve safety and improve operations. Commercial airplanes have to meet not only common standards for safety of operation in normal flight as they carry you and me around, but they also have to meet safe operation in all but highly improbable failure conditions. And so any failure that could happen, I wouldn't say likely, but a failure that is anything but highly improbable has to be accounted for, and the airplane has to be able to be shown safe in that condition. And so for that reason, it's a very safe means of transport.
How safe do you think the average small plane
The average
is?
small plane is also quite safe. Small planes are certified to different regulations than large airplanes, and when they're operated by private pilots, they're also operated according to different regulations than commercial planes. And that's been done intentionally in recognition of the fact that large commercial planes are being used for commercial hire and for profit. So any individual, by just buying an airplane ticket, goes and gets on the airplane and is entitled to an expectation of safety. The understanding in a private pilot arena is that someone who's flying on their own is taking on more of the responsibility for their own safety and the safety of their passengers, and that shows up in a I wouldn't say reduction of safety, but I would say a change in the sorts of requirements that they're required to meet. The rules aren't quite as numerous, and the requirements for the pilot experience and the operations aren't as extensive as well.
What about warplanes? How safe are they?
Warplanes were built to a different requirement than commercial airplanes. For warplanes, the ultimate requirement is to accomplish the mission, and safety. It's a little overstated to say it's a secondary goal, but the mission is primary. That's different from commercial airplanes in the sense that in commercial airplanes, safety is the primary requirement, and the performance requirements, the only performance requirements that exist for commercial airplanes by law are for safety, for takeoff and landing and safe climb in the event of engine failure and these kind of things. Whether or not the airplane can economically take passengers around and make money is not the FAA's concern. They're only concerned that it's safe. In the case of warplanes, you have a different situation, because with warplanes, the important thing is to take the mission. This airplane needed to be as fast as it could be. It needed to be at least as fast as the airplanes it was fighting, and better if it was faster. It needed to be able to turn with the tidal radius. It needed to be able to get around, point those guns in the correct direction to fire and hit the other plane before that plane could do it to them. That was number one. Now, if it also wouldn't just immediately fall apart and explode if it got hit at all, that was a good idea, because then it could take some battle damage and get home safely. And so there is an aspect of safety that gets involved. It tends to be more performance related. Different airplanes had different philosophies to how that kind of safety was accomplished. For example, this airplane has some armor plating to protect the pilot in case of bullets firing in. It also has fuel tanks that are self-sealing. If bullets pierce them, they will close up and not leak. Some other countries, either because of a desire for a lighter airplane or lack of materials or simply getting them out faster, would omit some of those features to have a faster, more maneuverable airplane that was also more vulnerable to enemy fire.
There are 25,347,060 planes in the air every year. How many of these do you expect will crash?
Well, I can't give you an exact number because I don't really know those statistics personally. But what I can tell you is that with all of the effort on safety and safety-related design, maintenance, and operations, we've really been able to drive down the accident level to very low levels for both commercial and private operations, and they've been fairly constant in the last few years. And so I hope that we can see ever-increasing amounts of safety and drive the accident rates lower and lower, but statistics do suggest that the amount we'll see in this year probably will be very similar to last year and the year before, hopefully with some improvement. And again, I don't know those numbers offhand, but that's what I would expect to see happen as a general downward trend.
When an airplane accident occurs, does it make you feel more or less safe about flying?
Well, it scares a lot of people, and there's no doubt that I understand why it would. But here's what happens. When an accident happens in the sky, there's regulations that make them take those planes out of the sky, that type of plane. And the regulations are then required for even more safety in the future. So the reason I feel safer is because they take more precautions to make sure that accident will never happen again.
Which form of transport are you most likely to die from? Plane, train, car, or bicycle?
No, I'm afraid I don't. The answer to that is going to depend a lot on what any individual person does, of course, because it depends a lot on your exposure time being in those particular modes of transportation. What happens there is that each one of those has its own unique risks and ways to mitigate those risks. Out of those ones that you mentioned, I would personally think that the planes and the cars have probably had the most work put into safety of both construction and operation, and the other two probably the least over time. But again, if you never ride a bicycle, you're not very likely to have a problem with it.
Do people find planes unsafe when they were first commercialized?
When the airplanes were first commercialized, there was a concern about making sure that people understood what safety features were available and that there was safety. Obviously, people who'd never been, just being up in the air and not feeling in control of what's happening around you was an issue. One specific thing that airlines did was introducing the flight attendant. This was actually worked out in conjunction with the FAA, well, CAA at the time, regulators, as a way of enhancing safety on airplanes. The flight attendants had training in first aid, they had training in emergency procedures, which they still do today. And part of their explicit job was to provide for the safety and comfort of the passengers in the flight, not only for deplaning and departing and the things that we're used to, but in case of emergencies or problems. And that program was one of the very specific things that airlines did in response to enhancing safety and perception of safety at the beginning of commercialized travel.
How safe does flying generally feel?
I feel very safe when I fly. I fly every year for 50 or 60 flights. I've flown that way for 30 years. I've never felt unsafe. In fact, the safety odds of being on an airplane are much better than if I were behind the wheel of my car on the I-5 freeway or the 405 freeway. Because the odds of being safe in an airplane are better, because the precautions they take are more rigid, and the people who fly them are professionals. And typically they're not texting anybody while they're flying. So I've always felt safe on an airplane.
Over the past 30 years, have you felt safer or not as safe while flying?
Well, I've actually felt safer. A lot of it has to do with experience. And when you've flown for 30 years and you haven't had any incidents, history is on your side. But the aviation industry takes more precautions every year. Technology is better. It's true that some of the planes are older, but still the precautions are more than they've ever been. The FAA requires more in terms of plane safety, and what the pilots do, the checklist that they have to go through, is something that other industries don't have to do, and which has the safety of the passenger in mind, which means they have my safety in mind. So when I step on a plane, I feel safe.
After 2 early hours in the museum, it's time to go.